This is the Reluctant Leader podcast, the podcast designed to help you if you've landed a leadership role through no fault of your own and now need to find out what you should be doing. I'm your host, Mark Terrell, and have been there and know what it feels like and made all the mistakes. In each episode, I'll be getting to grips with a leadership topic by interviewing an expert in their field. You'll find out why they do what they do and take away some top tips you can use to become a more confident leader. For more content and to keep in touch with how the project is developing, go to www.thereluctantleader.co.uk. If you have any comments about the episode, you'll find me on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter. So let's crack on with the show. Today I'm talking to Nick Clarke. Nick is a workplace consultant with 30 years experience and runs his own workplace design and build company. He has just launched his own YouTube channel where he shares tips and tricks around maximising working environments, concentrating on 4 topics. They are health and wellness at work, sustainability, environmentally friendly construction methods, tips and hints to improve your workspace, and product reviews to reveal the latest trends in office interiors and technologies. I hope you enjoy this chat we had about working environments, and I'll catch you all on the other side. So Nick, welcome to the Reluctant Leader podcast.
Thank you.
I can remember back in my retail days how important it is to have a good working environment, and that's what we'll be talking about today. But before we go down that route, what I ask all my guests is, why do you do what you do, and what was the pivotal moment that took you down this path?
Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks for inviting me on. Well, actually, very recently, I'd probably say about 3 or 4 years ago, I was really struggling in my business. I was involved with some other directors, and we went through some stages where we were starting to lose quite a lot of projects, and I was really doing a lot of soul searching. And I seem to remember I was just feeling that we were becoming irrelevant. We just weren't relevant to the industry. So I made some big decisions 2 years ago. Left the business I was in, started up on my own, and literally with a clean slate decided what exactly did I want to look like? What did I need to do? What did I need to change just to keep on in this industry, which I've been doing for 30 years. So it was quite a jump. The reason that I do what I do is that I still enjoy it. I still enjoy dealing with the clients. I still enjoy the design process. And as you were just saying, I enjoy the expression on people's faces when they do actually have a new working environment, or maybe they relocate to new premises. So that's what I'm doing these days.
And I suppose with everything, technology improves and design improves, and it's keeping up with what's all those constant changes, isn't it? It's like anything really. It's knowing where the market's going and the options that all workplaces have got to adapt to the need of the working environment.
Oh, absolutely. And do you know what? I think the real difference that we were having when I talk about relevance and relevance to our industry and to my industry in particular was also from design and from technology. It was involved with actually being able to use consultants and bring fresh ideas in. So we have a project, we have a brief. Don't just stick with the same designers that we just kept on pastry cutting the same old thing over and over again. That's why we were becoming irrelevant. So in my business now, I have a series of probably 3 or 4 different design agencies, consultants that don't cost me unless they are actually bringing some benefit to the project. And we're just becoming more creative. And we're winning more work because of it. So, keep up with the technology, change designs, don't get stuck into your same old business ruts. That's ever so important.
Yeah. And so what are those key things that are happening at the moment that people are particularly sort of focused on and are getting good results within the workplace that you can see?
Well, we're still busy even when people are contracting. We're seeing an awful lot of consolidation. It started in the financial crisis with, a lot of government organizations and the austerity, but it's moved into big business now. And we are beginning to advise clients, for example, Avison Young, GVA, that we've just finished, that was reducing from 2 floors into 1. You can imagine the savings just in terms of the rental lease costs. And it involves getting into new ways of working and finding ways that people can work together, they can collaborate together. And it doesn't mean that every single person has a desk, because that is what is old fashioned. People work in different environments, and we need agile and flexible working spaces. That is what is changing.
So it's very much about the efficient use of space, isn't it? As costs increase, I suppose every square foot has to be, useful and not wasted, especially in city centres. I know the sort of rents they have to pay. Obviously, they can't afford to pay for the space they're not using. No.
And do you know what the biggest change is? When you were saying how you felt after a retail refit and how your environment and your space changed, this is also applying to when businesses begin to adopt new ways of working, and they're showing maybe a contracted workplace, maybe not as big as they were used to, but they are bringing in nicer colors, booths, high back sofas, different places to work. And technology is allowing them to come and go, drop into meetings. And it is, a lot of it is about reducing office space. It's not always about increasing it and expanding. And that is a big take up.
Yeah, because I guess there's 2 things there, that people are spending time at home working, and there's also a lot of time that people are on the move and working as well. So they don't need to have a location or an office available to them all the time, do they?
No, absolutely not. And that is up to the employer. That is up to the employer to begin to, it's quite an old-fashioned thing, to actually trust the employee to be working from home and trust the employee to be flexible and to be agile. And that, I suppose, is quite a modern concept that not all businesses are that quick to adopt. But there is a bit of trust involved, that does come with it.
But this is a key leadership conundrum, I suppose, is being allowing freedom for your team to work the way they want to work, but still having some sort of way of checking that they're getting on and getting things done, which is obviously a completely different topic, which we won't go down today. But I went to a meeting this morning, and it was held at a co-working space. And I'm sure you're seeing lots of these sort of co-working spaces popping up everywhere, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the City of London has lost an incredible large amount of office space to these sort of co-working environments, these flexible working spaces, these drop-in zones. That is a big change. I think larger companies are always going to require their head office. They're always going to require a base, but there is a lot of workplace consultancy involved in being able to analyze the business, find out where the employees work best, and how do they communicate? What sort of meetings do they want to do? They can Skype, they can do video conferencing. That is what we've got to do. We've just got to keep off of the roads, and we've got to be more flexible, more agile, and more productive. And that takes some analysis of your workplace to see how you can do it. It's not as easy as just saying, right, everybody go home and don't come in on a Friday and do this, that, and the other. So you need to work it out to make sure that it is. Technology is allowing you to communicate with your co-worker. That, I suppose, is what it comes down to.
Okay, so when someone calls you in because they're thinking about having a bit of a refit, how does that process work? Where do you normally start? What are the sort of questions you ask when someone's looking to refit?
Well, when I was talking about 4 or 5 years ago, beginning to feel irrelevant, the questions that were coming back from our post-mortems of our clients were, you didn't understand us. So if I take anything back from those bad days and how I've had to turn myself around, is first of all, you have to begin to learn what the client's business is all about. It's fact finding, it's digging deep into questions and really beginning to understand the business, understand the person. And then we then start to turn around all of our skill base, which is showing the clients how that they can adopt new ways of working, how much money can potentially be saved, what sort of office space is more suitable to them if they're looking for a new office space. And that's when our skills come in and the rest of our design team comes in. But the answer to the question is, we've got to understand the client. We've got to understand their business. And that's what we dig deep into.
I suppose it's about understanding the way they work, and like you've said, about different ways that they need to get meetings and how they work together, and when they need space apart and all those sort of things. That's why it needs to be so adaptable, I suppose, is that people need different spaces for different situations.
I think what has changed, what has been a big change only over the last 2 or 3 years, is that as we are going into these environments and we were talking to clients, because they're so involved in their business, they're maybe not seeing the wood for the trees themselves. And we are beginning to educate them into different styles of working that maybe they hadn't adopted or even thought about. So you're seeing quite a lot of sort of eureka moments happening with clients when you begin this consultation process, because they maybe haven't thought of different ways of working. They haven't thought of different styles of reducing office space, of creating less desk space and creating more breakout facilities. And that's when the workforce begins to perform, and when they can retain staff or even interview new staff, is you're creating a different working environment. That's what we begin to show during our process.
And that's an important point, actually. What you just said there is about, not only if you've got the right environment, you're more likely to attract the right sort of people, and also you're more likely to retain people because they're happy in their environment. People. I'm sure it's one of the criteria that people, highly skilled people that probably could choose where they work. One of the things that they're going to decide is actually, is it an environment that I want to work in?
Oh, completely. I mean, it is a major, major subject. I mean, I think we do a lot of work in Bristol, for example, which has got a lot of high technology companies. It's got all of the university graduates coming into IT related organizations, and they now, you can call them millennials, the younger generation potentially. They are coming into it. They expect connectivity. They expect a cafe culture. They expect flexibility. And that is what they want. They're not looking for extra holidays. They're not looking for all the traditional benefits an employee might seek from its employer. But you've got to create the right environment. And that's not bricks and mortar and internal partitions and carpets and color. That is culture. And I think what we do more, if anything, these days, is we show clients how to adopt new cultures without turning their business on its head, but it's beginning to offer benefits to new employees that are coming in, and retaining staff, because let's face it, they can pick and choose. There are options for them out there. Certainly the higher skilled individuals. Yeah.
And I suppose if there is, you talked about culture there, which is really important, and having, those sort of mission statements and all those things that really sort of should hopefully emanate through the business. Those are the sort of things you can actually incorporate into design, I guess. You can bring them in and put them on the walls and all that sort of stuff. I expect you've.
Well, there is, yeah. I think that had a place. I think the mission statement had a place. what is the big change in business these days is that the business needs to understand they need to be authentic. They need to be honest when they need to be that with their employees. And that is what is changing. It's not that everyone's walking around with flip-flops and skateboards. It's not all of that. It certainly isn't. But it's becoming authentic, and it's becoming honest, and it's trusting the employees to perform and to work, and that they're not under a magnifying glass. They're not clocking in, but it's a two-way thing. Just a two-way thing. But authenticity is what business needs to offer. It needs to be transparent to its employees.
Mm-hmm. It's a really interesting topic. So if we think about, we've got, I suppose this is a podcast for leadership, for those that are in leadership position, and what they think about for themselves firstly is to set themselves up so they've got an environment that they can work well in. And I had somebody sent me some feedback once. I use a product called Motivational Maps, and one of the strategies that came out in his map was just to tidy his environment. And he said, I did it, and it's amazing how better I felt. So that's just a small little bit of feedback I had about just tidying up and having an environment that's is in order. Is there anything else that particularly, if you're working in a leadership role, is there any certain things that you see quite often which work really well in that environment?
Yes, I mean, if you were going down that particular route in doing a new sort of space plan, a new sort of layouts of offices, you're looking at, I suppose, even if you took it to the basics of retrievability, when departments are questioned, how many files have you got? How do you actually access to all this information? The truth that does come back to say no. And certainly in a modern environment, when you're maybe not paperless, but you are paper light, the whole point of a new environment is that when you actually do analyze, and maybe we do time in motion studies and go, do you know what? Nobody is accessing those cupboards. Nobody is accessing those files anymore. It's all digital. You can retrieve anything as and when you want it. But let's give the space back to people. Let's give the space back to an environment. We just create, good air, good light, and as close to nature as you can get. That is your environment that we're trying to give people. Mm. And I'm not saying that we have to all become minimalists and we have to, do the old-fashioned clear desk policy and everybody used to laugh at. But the fact of the matter is, when you actually adopt design, you do want to create clear spaces and places to think. Clear, not clutter it all with storage and cupboards. And we do go into some offices and you do look at them and think, things haven't changed in 10 or 15 years. And they really haven't.
Yeah, I suppose there is an opposition. Some people that are used to working with paper are going to take a while to adapt. But obviously, those that are coming into the environment, the work environment now, are expecting it to be pretty much, if it's not paperless, like you say, paper light. That's the first one that I've heard that term expression, but it's true. And I suppose with that in mind, when you're designing spaces, then you can, where you used to think about, a storage cupboard for, something like stationery or something, I guess you need, you can do without that or actually reduce the space that's needed for that sort of stuff.
Oh, completely. When we look at some working environments, some workplaces, some offices that clients are actually in, what you're going to deliver. When you walk into a space, you can feel the culture, you can feel the environment, you can almost feel the business, and sometimes you can just see it. You can just see what needs to happen straight away. And I think sometimes the client, I don't think the clients do know it. We walk into so many environments and you think you probably haven't accessed that stationery cupboard in weeks and weeks and weeks in end. I mean, you can order it you can order it in the afternoon. It'll be here the following morning. What do you want to stuff it all into cupboards for? That is the difference of the environment that we all live in, but we don't seem to sometimes adopt it in our work environment. That's the situation.
Yeah. Okay, so just moving on to something else that I've noticed you've created recently, and that is that you have you've opened a YouTube channel where you're showcasing some of this funky stuff that is started to be adopted into working environments. Where did the inspiration for that come from?
Well, it really comes back to a brief subject, which ended up being intellectual authority. That is where marketing was heading. That's where I needed to become relevant. I needed to show some sort of authority that my particular expertise I was an expert in. So I could begin to post information on social platforms through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through any or Instagram, through any of them, that people had to begin to build a belief that in my business, I had some authority on what my subject matter was. As you begin to take that further, that really then comes into a lot of changes, and a lot of changes are around self-education. And people, my clients used to call me in because they wanted to know information. They wanted to find out about a particular subject, and they wanted me to tell them. That doesn't happen anymore. We all know that we do our own research and we make our own opinions, and then we reach out to whoever can provide that service. So as I'm beginning to think more deeply about my business and my industry, is that I am aiming eventually that I can offer self-education. I can offer insights into my particular expertise and my industry. But in the meantime, I've got to build some subscribers, and I've got to build a community. And what I'm doing is at the moment, I'm just sharing and I'm just giving information that people might find of interest about their working environment and see where it will lead. But these days, I think we have to share honestly, authentically, everything that we know. And if we are giving value, then we'll end up with some clients. That's the change. That's the difference these days, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's very similar to the inspiration behind this podcast. It was actually helping people up front, and like you say, if people hear you and the way you talk and see you and all those sort of things, it just breaks down lots of barriers, and at some point, at the right time when they need your services, hopefully you'll at the top of their list to contact. So I've looked at some of the videos you've done, which have been really interesting, actually. There was one I noticed about a moss wall, which you had had a spec and you had to come up with some sort of design for, which is quite a challenge, I guess, at the time.
Well, it was, and it still is my leading video, and it is obviously the most popular subject. That whether I need to go into moss farming, and that is the direction that we're heading, I don't know. But it's a small part of the office interior and the office environment. And yes, I did create my own moss wall. So I encourage all of your listeners to go and have a look at my video, and please put some comments as to what you think of my ideas and some of my subject matter.
Yes. Well, I think it's interesting in that, who would have thought, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago that you would be installing that sort of thing in a working environment. Probably you thought it would gone a bit mad if that was the case.
Well, I think this is what the subject matters of my YouTube channel is going to be. I've sat and spoke with my digital agency, and we've got to be current, haven't we? We've got to be relevant, and the relevance these days are my subject matter. It's health and wellness in the working environment, and it's sustainability, environment, and with that comes nature and being as close to it as possible. So planting in the working environment, in the offices or the outside space coming in, it's massive. It's a huge, great big growth part of business. I mean, I was only watching some videos about Singapore the other day, what do they call the Great Garden City, that they're bringing everything, planting outside of buildings, living walls. It's it's a big subject matter, very big.
Mm. And I suppose also we've talked about obviously furniture and those sort of things, but environment also is about, you know, air conditioning and all that sort of stuff. Is that something still that's really important?
Oh yeah, I mean, if I go into a working environment, I start talking to the clients. There are three main factors that will always be the most important, regardless of any other subject: too hot, too cold, too drafty, too dark, too light. And that's where you start. And that is health and well-being. So you've got to create environments that has got good air, it's got good natural light, and has got as close to nature as you can get it. And that is what is relevant. So you've got to start with the environment. You know, the environment itself is the provision of fresh air and tempering the climate according to the individuals. And that is the most important thing within the working environment. Fact.
So I guess that's not changed over the years. I suppose that's always been the case, isn't it?
Yeah, that has always been the case, but you would be amazed how many times that is overlooked, and people get that wrong. Even after spending a lot of money on a refurbishment and a refit, they still, to this day, overlook the key facts of an environment. And it's true. I mean, we see speculative workspace that is launched onto the market by architects and developers, and it has got the most horrendous heating, ventilation, and cooling systems installed actually within the building that you can't adapt, you can't change. You know, people are always going to want to put some form of offices, some cellular environments, and they're creating these spaces cheaply for open plan. And that's another subject we won't go down, whether it works or whether it doesn't. But they certainly get the heating, the ventilation, and the cooling wrong, even to this day.
What's that? When they've originally built the building? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah, it's when they refurbish buildings and put them back onto the market for letting. So even when they create new spaces, they because it's the most expensive part of an installation, they often will try and cut corners and try and make that as a lesser specification. Therefore, it doesn't maybe work properly, or it's not adaptable. And you can't just offer a big, large amount of space, 5,000 square feet, and the developer expects it all to be open plan all the time, because it's not going to be like that. You know, you need to have zones. You need to be able to control temperatures. You just can't do it like that. So you do need advice. You do need the expertise of someone like us to come in and review it. You know.
Yeah, and I guess you're using technology that you can actually, you know, show a client what it's going to look like and feel like in the 3D video anyway, can't you, these days?
Oh, of course. I mean, my website's got all examples of that on. You know, you've got CGI work as standard, computer-generated images. You've got video walkthroughs. We're going back a little bit more into developed designs, and the designers actually producing drawings and colouring in versions as concepts as well. So it's, you know, the designers offer all sorts of different aspects, but we will always ensure that we visualize exactly what the client is going to get before they get it. Yeah, that's a very important point.
So I guess takes a bit of the guesswork out what it's actually going to feel and look like, if you can do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've got to. When we do our presentations, when we do our designs, when we show areas of what it's going to look like, what it's going to cost, the client will always get a very good impression these days of exactly what it's going to look like. The technology has brought us to this point.
Good stuff. Okay, well, sadly, time is running out on us. So we got to the point where we're going to have to wrap things up. But before we do that, I always ask my guests to give us the 3 top tips that they would give to anybody that's considering, or in your case, looking at the environment and what they should be looking at first. What would those top 3 things that you think that people should look at first?
I think they will always go and do their research, and they are quite welcome to do that, but always bring in an expert. Try and reach out to a consultant, and you will reap the benefits. Don't try and do it all yourself, but take these principles, create good air, a good environment, good ventilation, create good lighting, look as much as to the natural lighting as you possibly can, or certainly the adaptability of the lighting for moods, for different environments, colors, finishes. And again, take the new step. Get a moss wall. Try and bring some of the outside in. You know, those are the look for some of the latest designs. You're trying to inspire people. You know, we want inspiration in our working environment, so we can become creative. We like to go to work. You know, they're nice spaces to work in. You know, get creative.
Get creative. Good stuff. Well, thank you for your time today, Nick. It's been fascinating, and I will be putting all the details in the show notes about your YouTube channel, etc., for them for our listeners to check out all the exciting things you're up to. But for now, hopefully we'll catch up again soon in real life. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please take a moment to leave a review. Don't forget to check out the Reluctant Leader project at www.thereluctantleader.co.uk. Make a note to start, stop, or continue doing whatever struck a chord in this episode. And until next time, be the best you can be.